Reuters is reporting on the situation in Detroit today. It turns out the authorities recently cut off the water to Detroit residents, and then because of some international pressure, they actually turned it back on for a brief amount of time. I think it was about 30 days that they turned the water back on, and, you know, the international news stories kind of quieted down for a little bit. Well, now they just turned it off again. Why did they turn the water off? Well, they say it's delinquent bills. So there are very few people that have jobs in Detroit because there are none available, and apparently you have to go thirsty because of that gross situation. So no water for the residents of Detroit. And by the way, how much would it cost to fix the problem and pay off every single delinquent bill? $90 million. $90 million. So this story is a perfect example of why progressives are furious at the United States of America today and the government, because we're idiots. I mean, our priorities are comically stupid. So let me do a little exercise with everybody and tell you some of the other things that we spend money on and how there's been zero talk of maybe reallocating some funds so people in Detroit don't go thirsty. Now, remember, as I'm giving you this information, $90 million, that's all it cost. $90 million to pay every single delinquent bill and turn the water back on. We spend $4 billion a year, with a B, billion dollars a year, on welfare for ExxonMobil. They say, oh, we need it for research and development, so give us $4 billion and shut up. Now, the reality is you're already one of the most profitable corporations in the world, so why would you need $4 billion? I mean, isn't the fact that you're one of the most profitable corporations in the world incentive enough for you to do your own goddamn research and development? But no. They say that's a separate issue. Just give us the money we need for research and development. Okay, fascinating. $6.2 billion a year is spent on welfare for Walmart. $500 million a year is given to the police in military equipment. $83 billion a year is given to the big banks in subsidies. Then we also have $49 billion a year that was spent from 2006 every year until this year on the F-35-2. It's a warplane that literally doesn't even fly yet. Then we have $1.5 billion a year that we send to Egypt. And why do we do that? Well, we give it to the leadership of Egypt, and then the leadership of Egypt gives it right back to us, and we send them, warplanes, armament, ships, you name it, all military stuff. That's part and parcel of the military-industrial complex. And also, might I add, that according to a recent Pew poll, 85% of the population in Egypt hates the United States of America. So we're giving $1.5 billion to a country to take our weapons, and their population hates us anyway. Seems like a brilliant idea. Really does. We also send $3 billion a year to Israel, a country that doesn't need it, and they even admit that they don't need it. Now, here are my favorites. Those are the big dollar expenditures, and again, only $90 million to turn back on the water for the people in Detroit. But here are some of my favorite things we spend money on. $3 million we send to study the World of Warcraft video game. That's at different universities around the country. We spend $700,000 studying cow farts. We spend $615,000 making Grateful Dead memorabilia. $239,000 studying e-dating. $442,000 studying the behavior of male prostitutes in Vietnam. That's very important. I don't know if you know this. $1 million on creating animal poetry to raise environmental awareness. Look, I'm all for the environment. I'm all for animals. Do we need to spend money on poetry for that purpose? No. $175 million maintaining vacant buildings, because why not? You might need it one day. $1.8 million for the Las Vegas Museum of Neon Signs. This is like a sick joke. We spend $800,000 to give to the NIH, the National Institute of Health, for a genital washing program for men in South Africa. $90 million, man. That's all it costs. $90 million is all it costs to turn back on the water for residents of Detroit. People in Detroit apparently are living in the Congo today. Okay, that's what the multiple layers of government, whether the local government, state government, or federal government, that's what they've all decided. They so don't give a shit about Detroit that they're just like, yeah, fuck it, turn the water off. Let them go thirsty. We don't give a shit. And at the same time they're saying that, here's all the nonsense we are spending money on. Every single one of the things I just named, we can go without. Okay, and some of these things like the $83 billion a year that we give to the big banks, the welfare check, right? How many times over could we pay that $90 million? $83 billion. Take a little chip out of that. I was going to say a chunk, but it's not even a chunk. Just take a little chip out of that $83 billion and pay off the fucking water and call it a day. But no, that's how fucked up our priorities are, man. See, this is why progressives are so angry. Because we look at all of these separate stories, and people who don't pay attention, they just act like all these things aren't interconnected. But they are connected, because this is all our government doing it. And sure, there's different levels and layers of government. Again, there's local, city, state, county, federal, and, people are saying, well, they can't do anything because it's just, it's at a lower level of government. Bullshit, they can't. Bullshit, they can't. They don't even necessarily have to give the money to the local government, and then the local government or the county government or whoever, the state government, turns the water on. No, they could just go directly to the water companies and pay the fucking bill. The federal government can do it. And I don't give a shit who does it, just somebody do it. When you look, 57% of discretionary spending in the United States of America goes to military spending. That funds all types of bullshit, okay? That funds the 900 military bases we uselessly have around the world. That funds all these garbage, no big contracts that go to Halliburton, Raytheon, KBR, Boeing, all this nonsense. It pays for those Abrams tanks that we created that now sit in the middle of the Nevada desert collecting dust. It pays for all these, unnecessary F-35s and F-35-2s that we don't fucking need. It pays for all these Navy ships that we definitely don't need. When was the last time? Well, what's going to happen? Croatia is going to invade a harbor on the East Coast, so we need the Navy. Is that what it is? Is that what's going to happen? Albania is on its way right now, and they're coming via ship. Spare me. We don't need these things. We don't need these things. But 57% of discretionary spending is military. And at the same time, $90 million is all it takes to turn the fucking water back on in Detroit, but the government says, we don't care, let them go thirsty. We don't give a shit. We just don't care. And then I love the idea that some people blame them, as if they would choose to live without water, as if they just woke up and were lazy. Like, no, it's okay. We'll do without water. We'll be all right. People need water to survive. Obviously, if they could, they would pay off the money. But they can't pay off the money. Why? Because the fucking economy is in tatters and there's no job opportunities. Because all the fucking jobs that were in Detroit were shipped out because of right-wing policies like NAFTA and GATT and the WTO and all the so-called free trade deals that are actually outsourcing deals that just take good middle-class American jobs and send them overseas. Or send them to Canada, send them to Mexico, send them to fucking Bangladesh, send them to Cambodia. And people are like, oh, wow, I used to make $27 an hour plus dental. Now I make nothing. Okay? The problem is the politicians. The problem is clearly the policies that we've created ourselves, that the businessmen have fought for and lobbied for. They got what they wanted and everybody else got fucked over. And now the government spits in everybody's eye and goes a step further and says, we're not even going to turn back on your water when it's off through no fault of your own.